an interesting topic for you today, as usual. This one, the title of my message is, What's Your Deal? Come on, look at your neighbor real quick and say, what's your deal? Come on, you can do it. Just go like, what is your deal? You can do it. What is your deal? Hopefully you'll understand why in a moment. We're going to jump right into it because we don't have a ton of time today. I want to try to keep this around 20 minutes today. So let's jump in right to John chapter 21. It's the story of Peter. How many of you know Peter was a hard-headed dude? Anyone know that? He was a fisherman. He was rough around the edges. He was hard-headed. He was the one that denied Jesus 3 times. If you remember, Jesus said at one point, one of you is going to deny me. Peter doesn't just say it isn't going to be me, but he goes for it. He's like, not only is it not going to be me, but he's like, all these other 11, they're going to deny you. Not me, Lord. Isn't that the way it works sometimes? I always say, if you want to know what a pastor struggles with, find what he preaches against. Usually the people that make the greatest accusations about something are the ones that are struggling with the very thing. Come on. So Peter's like, oh no, it's not going to be me. That would be enough, right? Like Jesus is looking at like you 12 right here, and he's like, one of you is going to deny me. And everyone's like, not me. Right? That's normal, right? We want to deny. But for one of you to say, not me, but these 11, I'm pretty sure they're going to, Lord. Right? So of course we know he denies Jesus 3 times. And then we see in John 21 that then Jesus, of course, in a way that only he can, comes back to him. He says, so they had finished breakfast, and Jesus said to Simon Peter, verse 15, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, tend my lambs. He said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, well, then shepherd my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know these things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, tend my sheep. So Jesus kind of is setting him up here, right? He's not just forgiving him for every time that he denied him, which there's lots of messages on that. But he's also kind of setting him up here. And then he says to Peter, Peter, I say to you in verse 18, when you were younger, you used to gird yourself and walk wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hand and someone else will gird you and bring you where you do not wish to go. Now this he said, signifying by what kind of death that Peter, lowercase h, he would glorify God. When he had spoken this, he said to him, follow me. Interesting here, the Lord says to Peter, Jesus says to Peter, Peter, you're going to die, and you're going to die the death of a martyr. He's saying you're going to die. Here's what it's going to look like. In that moment, Peter had a decision to make because Peter obviously says 3 times, I love you. Jesus says, follow me. And so you got to kind of get Peter's state of mind here for a moment. And then what happens is Peter turns around and something changes in his mindset in a moment. He sees John, the one that Jesus loved. And something rises up inside of him. Something changes his focus. Something changes where he's at. He sees John. It says he saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them. The one who had leaned back on his bosom at the supper and said, Lord, who is the one who betrays you? So Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, Lord, what about this man? Jesus said to him, if I want him to remain until I come, this is a great question, guys. This is the crux of everything I want to talk to you about today. He says this, what is that to you? Y'all getting a feeling for where I'm going today? You follow me. We were having a conversation about you and your life and your future. And you decided to take your eyes off of me and worry about his deal with me. So if I decide to keep him on the earth for the rest of eternity, that's my deal with him. But you follow me. In other words, I've got to deal with you. I've got to deal with him. What does his deal have anything to do with you? How does it actually affect your life? Oftentimes I want to talk to you today about measuring our lives against one another. Because oftentimes we measure our lives, our success, our deal, if you will, by comparing ourselves to others. What does their life look like? How is it different than mine? Is our deal really satisfying or unsatisfying until we find out our neighbor's deal? I'm going somewhere, I promise you. I need your help on this. Just say amen if you don't understand it, all right? You're my man. Give me some of that. We find this story in Matthew 20. I'm going to build something here. Find a story in Matthew 20 where it says, "For the kingdom of God is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to his laborers for his vineyard." And the story basically goes like this. The landowner cuts a deal with these guys. He says, if you come work for 12 hours, I'm going to give you a denarius, a whole one denarius. So let's say it's $100. Give you $100. And then about 3 hours into that 12-hour workday, he finds some more guys and he says, we need your help, come on in. So they work for 9 hours. And 6 hours in, he gets another group of guys. And then 3 hours in, he gets another group of guys. And then with an hour left to that 12-hour workday, he finds more guys in the market that need work. He brings them on. And when it's time at the end of the day, you have to remember those guys that started out at the 12-hour mark, that worked a 12-hour day, they shook hands and said, you know what, I think that's a good deal. You give me $100, this is a deal. I'm happy with that. I'll put in a solid 12 hours until the end of the day. When the guys who had only worked an hour ended up getting paid the same $100 they got paid for working 12 hours. You see, when we take our focus off of him and our deal with him and our contentment with what we have with him, and we start deciding and looking around at who deserves what and what their motive is and what God has done for them or hasn't done for me, the moment you decide to do that and start to compare the two, you will find yourself discontent in a situation 30 seconds ago you were content in.
Come on, Pastor.
I've seen it in the church. I've seen it in the workplace. I've seen it in families. I've seen it in relationships. I've seen it with everything. Everyone's just fine and dandy until somebody gets a little upgrade. You're driving your car around. You love it. It's great. You're like, I just love this thing. I love the way it feels and drives. And then you go, I rode back from Miami this past whatever it was, Thursday, in a brand new Porsche SUV, the big one. This console looked like a spaceship. There were so many buttons, the guy didn't even know what did what. He was just like reaching for things, and I was like, the screen was like, it wasn't just like the HD format, like 16:9. It was the, whatever it is, Stephen, you got to text me and tell you what it is, but it's the anamorphic, like a movie screen, like that kind of. It's like, I was in the back seat, I was like, man, this thing's. My car kind of squeaks when it brakes a little bit, right? It's not quite as smooth as I thought it was. Then all of a sudden, you can't stop hearing that squeak. You can't stop hearing the noise on the road. This thing is slow. It is loud. It is obnoxious. The color of the paint sucks. Everything is going out the door in a moment because you compared what you have to somebody else's. You were totally content. I was totally content. Actually, I don't technically have a car right now, but that's another story. So I really had a problem on my hands. So I was like, this is way, way better than my bicycle at home. Using my dad's. I want you to see this. He says, when they'd received it, they grumbled at the landowner, saying to these men that have worked only 1 hour, you've made them equal to us, who have borne the burden in the scorching heat of the day. And what's the implied thing here, right? The implied thing here is we worked hard, they're lazy, they only worked an hour. But what we don't know is, and we're pretty sure of, is it's not like the men who worked an hour were given a chance to work 12 hours. It says that the landowner found them in the marketplace. It's not like they came to them and they were like, hey, we want you to work 12 hours. And the guys were like, no. And then they came back and said, how about 9? The guys were like, no. Until they got to an hour, and then they were like, okay, right? They could have been in the ancient version of the unemployment line, wringing their hands, trying to figure out how they were going to pay their bills and provide for their wife and family or whatever it may be. And then this miracle happens where a landowner comes up and says, hey, I'm going to pay you the same 12-hour amount. And he didn't even tell them that, but pay you the same 12-hour for an hour's worth of work. You literally could have been seeing in this moment a miracle for these guys who'd worked an hour, but because of our preconceived notion of what we think they are and the way we label one another, we can't get past the fact they only worked an hour and got the same amount as the guy with 12 hours.
Uh-oh.
So this is what Jesus says. He goes, but he answered and said to one of them, friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what is yours and go. But I decide to give generously. I decided to give above and beyond. I decided to pour out my grace and mercy and undeserved gift to this person in this moment. I've made that decision. And then he says this, is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with what is my own? Or is your eye envious because I am generous? I just might undo my shirt. I'm just getting so worked up right now. Is it possible that we're actually shaming the very generosity of God in a moment where we should be celebrating the generosity of God in the life of them? Do you want to know why? Because you and I, at one time or another in our life, were the guy that only worked an hour. You can remember a time in your life where you were given more than you deserved. You were given the same amount for less effort, less work. You received something you didn't deserve. You knew, you acted like you deserved it, but you and I both know the real gritty, nitty details. And you think to yourself, I got away with this one. Right? Every one of us in this room at one time or another were the guy that only worked an hour. And you know what's funny? When you're the guy that worked an hour, you're not complaining. If the guys that worked 12 hours had only worked an hour, they would have, it's not like this was a justice thing. They would have stood up and be like, I would love to receive this entire denarius like the guys who worked 12 times as much as me, but I don't think it's right. Oh no. When we're on the recipient end of a little grace and undeserved favor in a moment, all of a sudden we're just like, thank you, Lord, you love me so dearly. But when someone else is on the end of it, we're like, what? I've had musicians, we have had as a church for 20 years that will be like locked in here for 5 years, part of the band. Someone new comes along and we say, hey, you can join too. Their position doesn't change. They're still doing their thing. All of a sudden, 1 week goes by, they're discontent. They're mad. The song's not right. The tempo's not right. Everybody's screwing up but them. I'm like, what is going on? You were on the same drum kit you were on last week. Now we got a guy over there playing percussion and you're upset? All of a sudden, no one buys me sticks anymore, and these heads on these drums don't matter. It's like, that's the drummer running the lights. Just singing 1 week, so happy, praise the Lord. Just so happy to be used by God up here. It's just so 1 week goes by. You got somebody next to you with a mic. All of a sudden, it's like, I've been here for 5 years, and never put no diamond-crusted bedazzling on my microphone.
Tell the truth.
They were actually content until they realized what the last group got. And this is the play, guys. This is the play, and it's so intensely, deeply rooted in us. It's that is not fair. Well, you could be on a playground with 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. My daughter's in VPK, she's 5. These kids are like animals. They're just like shoving mulch in each other's face. They're like, diving into the sand and pushing each other and snotting on one another, the whole deal. None of them ever say, that wasn't very nice. That was unkind. That wasn't very loving. You just threw mulch at me, right? But you give one kid 2 lollipops and the rest of them 1. Oh, There's something over that. That's not fair. All of them are just perfectly happy with one. But man, you give one two, forget about it. The minute that comparison is made. Does that make sense? We have such a tendency to assess our well-being relative to our perception of other people's. Because oftentimes our perception is not reality. So we have a perceived idea of what somebody's going through. That they're lazy, they're this, they're that. We don't actually know what's going on. And we will take that perception, which more than likely is false, and then use that to assess our own well-being. I'm no Martha Stewart, but that sounds like a recipe for failure and disaster. Our assumption, when we assume these things, we will always get ourselves in trouble. Let me tell you this one last story, and then I'm going to make a couple points and we'll go home. We find it in a third story in the prodigal son. Same concept, right? Make a couple points with this. If you hang with me, you're going to get something. We know the story. Younger son comes back home. The older son blows a gasket. Why? Anybody know why? I'm baiting you into give me the wrong answer. Why does he blow the gasket? What's unfair? Boom. Thank you, Uncle Dave. He was not mad that the party was being thrown for his younger brother. He didn't object to the party being thrown. He didn't say, Dad, don't do this. That kid is this, that kid is that. He doesn't deserve it. That wasn't the problem. The problem wasn't the party. The problem is, why haven't you thrown me a party? And I'm going to point a couple things out to you. We oftentimes look at the young man who was out doing whatever, and we say, well, he was a slave to that riotous living or the world. But there's two slaves in this story. There's a younger brother who's a slave to that, and there's the older brother who's a slave to an orphan mentality, who doesn't realize that everything that the father had was his. And he was worried about one night of a party. He could have thrown himself a party every night. He was worried about one party for one thing. And let me tell you something right now. It actually says this. The Bible talks that he was out living riotously, but he found himself completely and utterly wasting away to the point of almost dying, where he was so hungry he was eating out of a pig trough. That's how disastrous his life was. He wasn't having a good time. How many of you know you can go on a run and have a good time for about a week, and then everything comes falling apart? He wasn't having a good time. And his brother was objecting to the idea that he would come home and have this party, thinking it was great, dandy, good old time out there, when he's eating out of the pig trough. And he actually says this. He goes, he's out there doing this and doing that, and then he says he's with prostitutes. And if the dad was a really good psychologist, he would have looked at him and said, who said anything about prostitutes? In other words, I could be sitting in the pew right here as the older brother, dreaming of out there, doing my little duty every week, little Christian Dan, dreaming of what it would feel like to be out there, doing what I think my younger brother is doing. And what my younger brother is actually doing is eating out of a pig trough, wasting away, dreaming of coming home. Do you know there's people in jail right now, I could give you their names, who are waiting for the moment that they would come home. Waiting to be released so they can come back here. You know what? And when they walk through the door, we don't care why they went to jail. We're going to open our arms up and just embrace them. This smile on my face is going to be from ear to ear. Dude, welcome back and welcome home. And listen to me, don't clap because I'm getting ready to zing you. Some of you are going to be like, he's never looked at me that way. He's never smiled at me like that. How come he only hugs me once a year? This guy's been hugged 3 times one morning, and he's been out there doing God knows what.
Come get a hug.
Yeah, you just got to come get one. Do you see what I'm saying here? All of a sudden, you're just fine and content sitting in our seat, just fine and dandy. Then some guy walks in, has been out doing God knows what. I jump up and welcome him in, and then you're like, I hate this church.
That's so true.
What? Instead of joining the group of people celebrating, the dude has come home and he was sitting in jail pining for the moment he would return to the Father's house. Amen. Do you see how much we're robbed of when we compare the two? I'll end with this. Boy, I did it. 20 minutes, less than 20 minutes. This is awesome. Bonus coming my way. Here we go. There's a comedian, his name is Louis C.K., and he says this. He says, one of his bits was he has a daughter, two daughters, like one that's like 9 and one's at 6, and he had a mango pop, and the 6-year-old wasn't around. It was like a mango fruit bar, and 9-year-old come into the kitchen and said, Dad, can I have it? And he goes, sure. As the last one, the 6-year-old comes in and sees the 9-year-old over there. The 6-year-old's fine, upstairs playing with Barbies or Peppa Pig or whatever they do, and doing their thing, and then she comes down, and all of a sudden, oh, you have a mango fruit bar. So she says to her dad, she says, Dad, I want a mango fruit bar too. And Dad goes, well, I don't have any more. She goes, well, I want one. And he goes, well, I don't have any more. And she says, I want one. Now, I know at that point as a parent, I'm going to the store and getting some stinking mango bars because I don't want to have an argument with a 6-year-old. But anyways, he says, well, you're not getting one because there is no more to get. And you're not going to get one. Your sister did, I get it. You're not going to get one. And she tries one last time. She goes, you get me a mango bar, Dad. And he said this. He said, honey, the only time you should look in your neighbor's bowl is to make sure that they have enough.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to add to it. You should never look in their bowl to see if you have enough. Because you will always find a neighbor whose bowl seems a little fuller than yours. And you always come back to yours and go, what? This is all? You want to go snooping around your neighbor's bowl? Their house, their car, their job, their family, whatever it is. It should be for one reason only. Is there a lack? Is there a need? Is there something I can do? And if there's not, don't worry about their deal with God. What is your deal? Amen. What's your deal?
Come on, preach.
Because if he is the God who said in Jeremiah 29:11, I know the plans that I have for you. If he's the God who said, I'm the author and the finisher of your faith, I'm not just here to be the creative power to it. I'm here to finish it and see it done to the end. If he is that God in your life, then why do you care about somebody else's deal? This message, it might feel like a little bit of like, ooh, but it will set you free. If we can stop looking at one another. I just came back. I want to tell you real quick. I came back from an incredible event. Some great people. Nick Walenda and his wife did these amazing stunts over that active volcano in Nicaragua. The stunt, the night of the event was awesome, but the best part was we spent 2 hours worshiping Monday night in his presidential suite, and 2 hours Tuesday night, maybe longer, worshiping, praying, speaking the word of the Lord. And as the event was going on, you may not be able to see it because apparently you saw more of my hands than you did anything else. You're welcome. That was me. I tried my best to get on camera for you guys, okay? But we literally were singing Raise a Hallelujah. And I'm going to sing in the middle of the storm. We were singing Out of the Ashes, Hope Will Arise, as he's coming through that. And we watched as the gases that were coming up began to spread as he got closer, like Moses parting the Red Sea, as his wife, his amazing wife, and she is amazing. I can't even describe to you what an incredible human being she is. She's declaring over her husband the word of the Lord, knowing that we serve a God whose promises are yes and amen, and we had bathed this thing in prayer and worship, and she's declaring it fiercely. They were all telling her, get behind the cameras, we need to be able to see you. And she's like, nope, I'm right up here against the wall. And she was singing, and her family was singing. We were all singing together. It was so beautiful to watch what happened. But I want to tell you this right now. You and I could look at that as fellow believers and go, wow. Do you know there's 6 million people in the country of Nicaragua, and they say 4 million of them watched it live. And probably a good portion of those 2 million don't have access to television. It's a third world nation. The streets were shut down. It was a ghost town. It was like everybody got abducted. There was no movement in the entire country as they watched. Here he is, and of course it's being translated. I don't know how many countries, like 30 countries or something, picked it up and bought it to show in their whole nation. Here he is declaring the word of the Lord, his wife displaying the beauty of God, the declaring hope and not to fear and all of that and what have you. And do you know that there is a performer who is a Christian, who is well known, who is on America's Got Talent, who has a relationship with their family, that just a day or two after the event posted an article on this person's Facebook saying that Nick was a carny fraud. A Christian, because he might have gotten a little more exposure than this guy's ever gotten before. Guys, as believers, if we get to a point in our life where we're so concerned about somebody else's deal and successes and comparing it to ourselves that we can't even see that the glory of God is being lifted up to millions of people watching. And that is canceled out because what about me? That's not fair. Gosh. Sentiment will ruin relationships. It will ruin families. It will ruin friendships. It will ruin jobs. It will ruin opportunities. It will hold you back from everything. And you and I, the best way around that is to remind ourselves we were once the guy who only worked an hour, and we probably will be at some point again. And we need to take ourselves out of the judgment seat of deciding who deserves what. And when we see somebody happy, when we see somebody's dream happening in a moment, they've hoped for years, instead of going, well, I just feel like this and that, and what about me? And I'm miserable, and now they look happy, and what is... No. My God, somebody's seeing the fulfillment of a promise, and instead of worrying about why yours hasn't come, how about we all together think to ourselves, if God did it for them, he'll do it for me. I can't anymore because I'm over my time I wanted to say. Does this make sense this morning? So as you leave, just remember that. If you're going to look in your neighbor's bowl, the only reason you should do it is to make sure that they have enough. Amen? Amen. Bless you guys. Love you. See you soon.